first off, the reason why they're rising for me, where you guys show they are in terms of ADP, and then we can discuss if I think there's only a couple really where there's a bigger gap. And one of them, like there was a gap of 3 spots, which at quarterback is kind of a big deal. CJ Stroud, I had him at QB 13. He's at QB 11 now. It was a pretty good reminder for me with the way that the Houston Texans were raving about him at camp that this guy's a really good passer. Like, I think maybe we focused so much on the fact that, no, he's not really that mobile, he's not going to run that much, that we forgot about that he was a prolific passer in college. There's a window here that he has a Justin Herbert type entry into the NFL or becomes a 4,500-yard passer on a regular basis. Where is he at in terms of ADP on your site, and what do you think about it?
Yeah, I really like Stroud as well. It seems like he's gotten lost a little bit in the Bryce Young and the Anthony Richardson talk, that Stroud has almost become an afterthought. But if you've got that, that mid-round, first-round pick in a super flex league, you're happy to get CJ Stroud because he is in that low-end quarterback 1 range. Currently at DLF, he's the quarterback 14. I believe you said you had him at 11 moving up. So, looking at the names ahead of him, Bryce Young, Kyler Murray, maybe that's a guy that you've moved him ahead of potentially. Right. Dak Prescott is there at quarterback 11. So you see some guys in that back end quarterback 1 range where it wouldn't take much from CJ Stroud or really honestly Bryce Young either to bump those young guys ahead of the veterans who we suddenly have some questions about.
So Dave, I can pretty well tell you, without even looking at it, I do have it up here, but I can pretty well tell you the 3 names that are going to be, I would guess, it's Bryce Young, it's Dak Prescott, and it's Deshaun Watson are the 3 guys that are ahead of him by ADP that are behind him in my rankings. Can you see a path to him being better than those 3 guys? And how are you feeling about Stroud as he heads into his first training camp?
I can see him being better than the veterans for sure. He was my favorite quarterback in the draft as a prospect. I thought he was the best thrower. Loved how he handled pressure, and reading about him throwing with accuracy in minicamp, it felt good. A little bias there from me. We'll see if it holds up when the practices are live, though.
I should clarify. I said Bryce Young. I meant Kyler Murray. I saw this tiny little guy.
Wondering
this tiny little guy running around, and I got the names mixed up.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he went ahead of Kyler Murray too, just because Kyler's future is uncertain. Again, lost year for Arizona. At what point does he come back and play for the Cardinals this year?
Right, and I think that's the other side of it, especially in a super flex league. I'm pretty certain CJ Stroud's going to be starting for the next 3 years. Dak Prescott's at the age where there could be a drop-off. He might be this good for the next 10 years, as some quarterbacks have been lately, or he could start to show signs of age anytime in the next 3 years. Kyler Murray, there's a real question about what his next 2 to 3 years look like, especially this year. We don't know how much he's going to play. And then Deshaun Watson, nobody talks about this, Ryan. Everybody's just, we're going to pretend like it didn't happen. But he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL last year. What if he's just not what he was in 2018, 2019, 2020?
Yeah, we really, I wouldn't say we are forgetting that. It's hard to forget, unfortunately, but I think we're certainly as a community kind of excusing what we saw on the back half of last season and assuming that was just all rust showing on the field. I'm still somewhat confident that he bounces back, not necessarily to top 5 status as he previously was, but certainly better than what we saw last year. But would it totally shock me if that's the new Deshaun Watson and he's just not a quarterback 1 anymore? I guess it wouldn't.
Very fair comment from Kevin. Nobody talks about this equals a thing everyone talks about. Maybe I just did that. Let's move on to the running back risers. One of these I feel like it's obvious, but I think we should at least talk about it with Ryan. Alexander Mattison was my RB 46, is now RB 28. Huge increase. Obviously, he's going to be the starting running back at the beginning of this year, at least. I don't know how much of a feature back he's been. Ryan, I've been talking since it happened. If I can get a first round pick for Alexander Mattison, and everybody says, well, you can't do that. Well, people are in some leagues. If I can get a first round pick for him, I'm doing it quickly. But he's also one of the biggest winners of the summer. Where's ADP at on him, and where are you at on him?
Yeah, it's tough to battle that because you are excited to see what he can do in that full-time role, but at the same time, this is like a screaming sell high opportunity. It feels like, and you're right. People are getting first round picks. One of my favorite tools at DLF is what we call the trade finder. You can plug in a name, plug in your league settings, and see actual trades that are taking place. And if you plug in Alexander Mattison, you'll see a ton of trades for future first round picks. So yes, you can get a first rounder for him for sure. His ADP currently, honestly, still feels pretty low. He is RB 29 in Dynasty, and that sets a new high mark for him, really by a long way. Last month he was running back 37. That was his new high mark. So I think we're going to begin collecting that July ADP very soon here in the coming days, and we're going to see him with a huge jump. I mean, you look at some of the names ahead of him: David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco, Dalvin Cook himself. I think we could easily see Mattison slide into that low-end RB2 range, 23, 24, somewhere like that is where I think he'll probably settle in.
Yeah, Dave, he mentioned David Montgomery, and I definitely want to talk about Mattison versus Montgomery. I also think Mattison versus DeAndre Swift is pretty interesting. Mattison versus maybe Rachaad White. Like, where do you feel good getting Mattison into that top 24, maybe top 20 range in Dynasty, or are you on the sell high train as well?
I'm on the sell high train because I'm not sure he's got more than one good year in him. If he can explode in this with this opportunity, then maybe he plays 3 more years as the Vikings lead running back. But if he's the guy that we've seen, I think he can help fantasy managers out as an RB2 this year, and then the Vikings kind of move on from him. And thinking about Montgomery, he's kind of at the point where he's a year-to-year proposition. Swift is almost certainly a year-to-year proposition. Rachaad White might not be. White might be able to be in the mix for Tampa Bay for at least 2 more seasons. And if he ends up seeing a big boost in efficiency, then we're talking about him. He's 24. We could see him playing 3-4 more years. So taking White ahead of Mattison makes sense to me.
Ryan, the second running back riser really makes me want to throw up a little bit because I feel like I'm just caving in to everybody else. And I do think it's getting more and more likely that he's going to have more work than what I was expecting this year. But Rhamondre Stevenson, I had him at RB19. I've moved him up to RB14, a borderline number 1 running back now. I don't like trusting Bill Belichick to do the same thing with his running backs he did the year before. Yes, that's part of it. I also think that there are things. Jacob Gibbs had a Twitter thread yesterday or the day before about Stevenson in short yardage and inside the 5, and he was bad last year. You look at Stevenson, depending, and this is one pass catching. Like if you talk to the yards per route run crowd, Rhamondre Stevenson was awesome as a pass catcher. You look at the yards per target, he was one of the worst in the NFL. The difference in my mind between those two things is target per route run. And I think that matters a lot at wide receiver and tight end because those guys earn targets. It seems to me that running back targets are generally more schemed up or quarterback dependent, and they've changed their offensive coordinator. So I'm concerned he doesn't have near as many targets as he did last year either. But I've moved him up to RB14. Where's he at in ADP? And do you share any of my concerns?
Yeah, I certainly do. He's RB14 for us as well, based on the ADP. He's been in that range somewhere between 12 and 14, really for the past 6 or 8 months since we kind of saw that breakout season from him last year. But the concerns are there. I mean, he a lot of what he accomplished last year was volume based. Damian Harris was out for much of the year, in and out of the lineup, and Stevenson was kind of the only option outside of a couple rookies that they added. And now at least the early camp talk is that, or mini camp talk is that maybe these former rookies, Pierre Strong, most notably, are going to eat into that work, especially as a pass catcher. So I would not be surprised at all if Stevenson saw a pretty significant dip, at least in his his pass catching work.
Dave, is Rhamondre Stevenson going to be in a Dynasty Risers and Dynasty Fallers column for me in the year 2023?
Yes, he will be. I agree. You just know that the Patriots want to use multiple running backs. The only times when Belichick hasn't done that is when he's found a running back that he's just like so sure can handle a 3-down roll. Even Corey Dillon, I think, lost a little bit of work when he was the Patriots guy, and he had a ton of great numbers. You weren't complaining if you had Corey Dillon on your fantasy team when he was with the Patriots. I don't know if Rhamondre Stevenson is Corey Dillon. He averaged fewer PPR points per game than his season-long average when he had 6 games without Damian Harris last year. He was at 14.3. His season average was 14.7. I think anybody that's realistic with Rhamondre and says, okay, this is a guy who could be right around, easy number, 14 PPR points per game, they'll feel good about drafting him. It doesn't mean you reach for him, and it doesn't mean you overvalue him in Dynasty. And he might be on that same type of plateau that we talked about with Mattison and with Rachaad White and David Montgomery, where what happens if he has a bad year? Do you really?
What happens if he fumbles twice at the goal line?
Coach that's going to say a running back, oh, it's okay that you had a bad year. Come on back. We'll give you the same role this year. And he's going to kick him to the curb, and he'll be a number 2 running back on somebody else's team. So I'm a little bit worried about the long-term upside for Rhamondre.
We are going to group my last 3 risers here, Ryan, because I just realized this actually. They all play for the same team. That team that Dave said earlier in the show was going to have a lost year. Marquise Brown goes from wide receiver 34 to wide receiver 30. Rondale Moore goes from wide receiver 51 to wide receiver 43. Trey McBride goes from tight end 18 to tight end 16. Now, the wide receivers here, the May update and the June update, obviously the DeAndre Hopkins release happened in between those. And we kind of thought that was coming, so it wasn't a big boost. Am I high or low on the Arizona Cardinals, or is it a mixed bag with these 3 guys?
Yeah, I'd say you're a little bit high based on our numbers, but all 3 players have seen some small increases in recent months. Hollywood Brown is up to wide receiver 26. He was wide receiver 33 last month. Rondale Moore, much lower than you have him, actually. He's wide receiver 59 in our ADP, was 62 the previous month. And then my favorite target of this group is the second-year tight end, Trey McBride. He actually lost some value according to our ADP, which I totally disagree with personally, because I'm with you guys. I don't think Ertz is there really beyond this year. I don't think we see him in a Cardinals uniform anymore, but McBride's tight end 21 right now. I love McBride as the target. The wide receivers, I don't know. I'm probably just staying away from him, honestly.
Couldn't it be possible that Marquise Brown gets traded along if the Cardinals do have a purge year, and really their defense is what I
think we're taking this too far.
Is that too far though? Because he's got a big contract number. If they're going to absolutely, tank, for lack of a better term, there's going to be a team that's going to want Marquise Brown. He's got speed, and we know that speedy receivers have a longer shelf life than they really should in the National Football League. So keeping him at wide receiver 30, that's where you made him. I think that's cool. He could be on a completely different team and in a much bigger role that could propel him to more stability moving forward.
I think the role is maybe the most interesting part, because we've got a completely new offense in Arizona. And what we saw last year was that Rondale Moore and or Greg Dortch in that slot role were looking at 9 targets per game. I've been a bigger fan of Rondale Moore, I think, probably than the community has. He does have injury risks. I don't care as much about that when we're talking about a guy who's wide receiver 45 to wide receiver 55 range. I really, at that point, what is the risk? You're risking a 10th or a 12th round pick on the guy. I do think that he has elite athletic traits, and those are the types of guys that I would like to invest in at that cost. But Ryan, to your point, Trey McBride was the only guy, I think, amongst the risers who I also wrote about this month as someone you should buy before training camp. because I do think he is one transaction away from being a top 12 tight end in Dynasty. I think he jumps over at least 2 of the rookies, if not all the rookies, by the middle of this season if Zach Ertz is gone.
Well, McBride, I mean, we kind of lose that perspective, but this time a year ago, he was the tight end 1 in that rookie class.
Yep.
We knew it would be kind of a slow start to his career playing behind Zach Ertz. And he didn't really show much until Ertz was off the field. But yeah, I certainly still have high hopes. Totally agree. I've been sending out offers for him. And I think everybody's, well, not everybody, but I think a lot of people are already on this same page, because I haven't been able to buy him at kind of what the market cost, the ADP, the rankings, even some of what we see in the trade finder. Right. I haven't been able to buy him for that. So you're maybe a guy you're going to have to overpay for, but I think you could still make a profit on a guy like that.
I think you can. That's right. I think you can hit that middle where you're overpaying at what everything says his cost should be, but underpaying based on what his value is going to be once Ertz is gone. He's also, Dave, another one of these tight ends who fits into that mode of what I've been saying about this year's rookie class. I would rather not draft them and just trade for them next September or October when everybody's soured on them because they had the bad rookie year that we should expect from rookie tight ends.
And you're just basically banking it on the history of rookie tight ends just not doing anything great. And no matter what type of opportunity is there for him and whatever he does with it, the odds are it'll be below whatever our expectations are. And that makes perfect sense to me. And that's why I haven't drafted. Have I drafted any rookie tight ends in any of the 3 dynasty leagues I'm in? I know we've got one draft starting soon.
I drafted some Sam Laporta before the NFL draft because people had him so far behind Michael Mayer. Now it's gotten more difficult to do that with Laporta.